Hello! Welcome to another storytime reading of Chinese myths and folk tales. So, again, for those of you that are watching from the YouTube channel, I started up this playlist series for the Lunar New Year. So we're going to be getting into some of these stories for the next month or two, give or take. We're going to be reading from this, and then maybe sometime down the line around summertime, we might transition back into like Grimm's fairy tales at some point. Um, but again, if you do like any of these tales, at the end of the video, there should be playlists that are going to pop up like right around these corners, right around here. But there's going to be to the Grimm's fairy tales and to probably the tales of horror. Go check those out. Really cool reading, a lot of really fucking awesome stories. And pardon my language, because some of these stories are probably you're probably watching with your kid or something. My bad, my bad. But they are really freaking good. So go check them out. Really good pieces of writing in there. For tonight's tale, we're gonna be doing the talking pupils. All right, so this one is gonna be just about a page, 2 pages long, something like that. A little less than 2 pages. All right, but grab your blankies, grab your snackies, because it's time for a storytime quickie. The talking pupils. At Cheongnigang, there lived a scholar named Feng Tong, who, though by no means destitute of ability, was a very unprincipled rake, and in the habit of following and speaking to any woman he might chance to meet. The day before the spring festival of clear weather, he was strolling about outside the city when he saw a small carriage with red curtains and an embroidered awning, followed by a crowd of waiting maids on horseback, one of whom was exceedingly pretty and riding on a small palfrey. Going closer to get a better view, Mr. Fang noticed that the carriage curtain was partly open, and inside he beheld a beautifully dressed girl of about 16, lovely beyond anything he had ever seen. Dazzled by the sight, he could not take his eyes off her, and now before, now behind, he followed the carriage for many a mile. By and by he heard the young lady call out to her maid, and when the latter came alongside, say to her, "Let down the screen for me. Who is this rude fellow that keeps on staring so?" The maid accordingly let down the screen, and looking angrily at Mr. Fang, said to him, "This is the bride to the seventh prince in the city of immortals going home to see her parents, and no village girl that you should stare at her thus." Then, taking a handful of dust, she threw it at him and blinded him. He rubbed his eyes and looked round, but the carriage and horses were gone. This frightened him, and he went off home, feeling very uncomfortable about the eyes. He sent for a doctor to examine his eyes, and on the pupils was found a small film which had increased by next morning, the eyes watering insistently all the time. The film went on growing, and in a few days was as thick as a cash. On the right pupil there came a kind of spiral, and as no medicine was of any avail, the sufferer gave himself up to grief and wished for death. He then bethought himself of repenting to his misdeeds, and hearing that the Kwangming Sutra could relieve misery, he got a copy and hired a man to teach it to him. At first it was very tedious work, but by degrees he became more composed, and spent every evening in a posture of devotion, telling his beads. At the end of a year he had arrived at a state of perfect calm, when one day he heard a small voice about as loud as a fly's calling out from his left eye, "It's horridly dark in here." To this he heard a reply from the right eye saying, "Let us go out for a stroll and clear ourselves up a bit." Then he felt a wiggling in his nose which made it itch, just as if something was going out of each of the nostrils, and after a while he felt it again as if going the other way. Afterwards he heard a voice from one eye say, "I hadn't seen the garden for a long time. The the epidrums are all withered and dead." Now Mr. Fang was very fond of these epidrums, of which he had planted a great number, and had been accustomed to water them himself, but since the loss of his sight, he had never even alluded to them. Hearing, however, these words, he at once asked his wife why she had let the epidrums die. She inquired how he knew they were dead. And when he told her, she went out to see and found them actually withered away. They were both very much astonished at this, and his wife proceeded to conceal herself in the room. She then observed two tiny people, no bigger than a bean, come down from her husband's nose and run out of the door, where she lost sight of them. In a little while they came back and flew up his face like bees or beetles seeking their nests. This went on for some days until Mr. Fang heard from the left eye, "This roundabout road is not all convenient. It would be as well for us to make a door to this." The right eye answered, "My wall is too thick. It wouldn't be all an easy job." "I'll try and open mine," said the left eye, "and then it will do for both of us." Whereupon Mr. Fang felt a pain in his left eye as if something was being split, and in a moment he found he could see the tables and chairs in the room. He was delighted at this and told his wife, who examined his eyes and discovered an opening in the film through which she could see the black pupils shining out beneath, the eyeballs itself looking like a cracked peppercorn. By next morning, the film had disappeared, and when his eye was closely examined, it was observed to contain two pupils. The spiral on the right eye remained as before, and then they knew that the two pupils had taken up their abode in one eye. Further, although Mr. Fang was still blind in one eye, the sight of the other was better than that of the two together. From this time, he was more careful of his behavior and acquired in this part of the country the reputation of a virtuous man. And that concludes the tale of the talking pupils. Wow. So these stories are vastly different from a lot of the Grimm's tales, I would say. It's so odd to think about, but they still contain like that little bit of morality, right? So you have this guy who's like incessantly pestering this woman who's betrothed on her way to visit her parents, and he's kind of like pestering her, so she punishes him by throwing dirt in his face. And quite oddly, they like really revere the rich in these books, as odd as that sounds. They almost seem to have some kind of like magical ability. When dirt is thrown from their hands, all of a sudden it's like almost like a curse. I wonder if that's going to continue to happen within these like myths and folk tales, because that's so different from the occurrences in the Grimm's fairy tales. In the Grimm's fairy tales, a lot of the misfortune, it happens to the poor, but a lot of the misfortune is vastly directed towards like the kingdoms and like a lot of the richer people in the kingdoms. So it's kind of odd to see kind of like that mirroring occurring within these. But hey, if you're watching from YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. I do appreciate you watching. If you want comment, it helps out with the algorithms quite a bit. And there should be some boxes that are gonna be popping up. They're gonna be to the Grimm's Fairy Tales and the Tales of Horror. Go check those out. Really, really fucking good tales. I'm so sorry if you're watching with any kids. I'm so sorry. They're so impressionable. Freaking kids. um, my bad, my bad. I'm so sorry. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. We're more than 200 stories in, and I'm still getting used to not cursing. Okay. But yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Be back for the next one, which is going to be The Painted Wall. Oddly familiar, right? I wonder if this has any correlation to the Tales of Horror uh painted wall story. But come back tomorrow. We're probably gonna do a reading for that one as well. Tomorrow is Thursday. Yes. So yeah, come back. We're gonna be handling that one for tomorrow too. All right. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you and goodbye. Bye.